So let's dive into one of history's greatest, most fascinating mysteries, the collapse of the classic Maya civilization. I mean, how does a society that was so incredibly advanced just disappear? As we're about to see, their story isn't just ancient history. It's a warning that echoes really powerfully into our own time. Okay, think about this for a second. This is the central question that has just baffled archaeologists for centuries. How does a civilization that could build these massive, breathtaking pyramids, develop some of the most advanced mathematics on the planet, and feed huge populations, how does it all just vanish, leaving these magnificent cities to be completely swallowed by the jungle? And look, this isn't just some dusty academic question. As one historian put it, if they couldn't survive climate change, why do we think we can? That really hits home, right? This is what's at stake. Understanding why the Maya collapsed isn't just about looking at the past. It's a critical lens for looking at our own future. Right, so first let's just set the scene. At its absolute peak, the classic Maya civilization was a powerhouse. We're talking monumental architecture, incredibly complex trade networks that crisscrossed all of Mesoamerica, and a deep, deep understanding of astronomy and math. By any measure you can think of, this was a highly advanced and sophisticated society. And then, almost in the blink of an eye, geologically speaking, it was gone. The sheer scale of what happened is just staggering. In just a couple of centuries, huge, thriving cities like Tikal, Copán, and Palenque, their populations crashed by over 90%. This wasn't a slow, gentle decline. This was a demographic catastrophe. So what happened? For years, theories were all over the place. Maybe it was disease, maybe an invasion. But modern science has uncovered a prime suspect, a trigger that really set the stage for the whole disaster. And it turns out the climate itself holds the first major clue. By drilling down into ancient lake beds and analyzing the sediment cores, it's kind of like reading a planet's diary. Scientists have been able to reconstruct the climate history of the region. And the timeline they've built is, well, it's revealing. They found this striking correlation. Right as the Maya civilization started to fall apart, a prolonged, really severe period of drought began. You can see it right here. The peak is around 750 CE, but by 800, the crisis is underway, lining up perfectly with the start of that drought. And listen, we are not talking about a few dry years here and there. The research shows that during this crisis period, the annual rainfall in the Maya heartland might have dropped by as much as half compared to what was normal. Just try to imagine supporting vast cities and intricate farming systems with 50% less water. It would be an absolutely devastating blow. So it seems like an open and shut case, right? A massive drought hits, and the civilization collapses. But here's the thing. Human societies, especially sophisticated ones like the Maya, have weathered tough climate shifts before. So was the drought really the whole story? All the evidence suggests no. It was the trigger, for sure, but it wasn't the bullet. Okay, this is where the story gets really complicated and, frankly, a lot more relevant to us. The drought, yeah, it pushed the entire Maya system to the brink, but it was a whole series of human decisions and actions that ultimately pushed it right over the edge. They had, without realizing it, created a crisis almost entirely of their own making. First on the list, deforestation. The Maya cleared enormous areas of forest, partly to make way for agriculture to feed all those people in their growing cities. But they also burned just immense amounts of wood to create the lime plaster they used to cover their magnificent temples and palaces. At the exact same time, their political world was pretty fragile. You have to remember, the Maya world wasn't one big unified empire. It was a patchwork of competing city-states. And as the environment started to get stressed and resources got scarce, all these long-standing rivalries just got way more intense. And you know what those intense rivalries led to? Endemic warfare. The archaeology shows a dramatic spike in conflict between these city-states during this period. They were literally fighting over what was left: the precious water, the good farmland, control of the few remaining trade routes. Okay, so here's the crucial part. It's how all these things created this disastrous feedback loop. The deforestation actually made the drought even worse by messing with local rainfall patterns. Less water and less food led to more war. The constant fighting shattered the trade networks that everyone depended on. And as everything got worse, the people completely lost faith in their kings and priests, the very people who were supposed to guarantee prosperity. Each problem just fed into the next one. It was a vicious cycle. So how do all these pieces of the puzzle fit together? What we're really describing isn't a single cause, but a chain reaction, a domino effect that brought the entire system crashing down. And the leading theory for this is something called a cascade failure. A cascade failure is, well, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's when a really complex system, like a whole civilization, has a failure in one area that isn't contained. Instead, it just spreads, triggering failures in other connected parts until the entire system just breaks down. So here's how the dominoes fell. First, you get the external shock. That huge drought hits the system. That leads to the second domino, internal resource scarcity. That scarcity then topples the next domino, political instability and constant warfare. And that final stage of social and political breakdown leads to the last domino, total system collapse and the abandonment of the cities, a complete and total unraveling. And this brings us right back to where we started. This isn't just about figuring out what happened thousands of years ago. The story of the Maya collapse is a stark, sobering warning for our modern world. A sophisticated society facing unprecedented environmental stress, political divisions making it harder and harder to solve problems that affect everyone, fighting over resources that are becoming more scarce. Does any of that sound familiar to you? The parallels are they're impossible to ignore. The Maya had sophisticated engineering. We have advanced technology. They faced regional environmental stress. We're facing global climate change. They struggled with resource mismanagement. And these are the exact same challenges staring us in the face today. The ingredients for their crisis look eerily, uncomfortably similar to our own. And this, right here, is maybe the most important takeaway of all. The Maya were not ignorant. They had incredible knowledge of their environment, of agriculture, of water management. Their collapse wasn't a failure of knowledge. It was a failure of collective action and political will, a total inability to change course before they crossed a tipping point from which there was just no coming back. So we end with this final, and I think pretty provocative question. We tend to assume that our civilization's complexity, our global trade, our amazing technology, makes us more resilient. But the story of the Maya suggests a totally different and, frankly, terrifying possibility. When a system is that complex and that interconnected, does it just mean there are more things that can break? Does our complexity actually protect us, or could it just accelerate the fall?